Let's do it, guys. Welcome to the Tripod, where we break down every game from a punting perspective. This is the recap pod, and I'm here alone, barbecuing alone tonight to recap the two games that we saw this weekend. It was obviously the second week of the NRL finals. We had two elimination finals, only 4 sides remain, and we've been sharing with you guys best bets all season long, and we had a bunch of best bets on the two games that took place over the weekend. We had a shocker of a weekend, to be honest, but we're here, rain, hail, or shine, regardless of whether, the bets are really successful or they're not. And we have been making it rain, I think, the last 6 weeks making money. And this week was definitely a setback. And I'm going to dive into each of the two games. Alex can't make it tonight, but that's okay. Just a couple of games to recap, although plenty to talk about for sure. Let's start with Friday night. This was the better game and definitely more talking points, I think, coming out of this game, of course. It was the Bunnies 34 beating Manly 26. Now, with our best bets, although we did pick the Bunnies, we won our same game multi, I think paying $4.74, had the Bunnies actually minus 5.5, which means we didn't need that late penalty to cover, but that definitely helped a bunch of people. But we still only went 2 and 4 in our best bets. We lost a few plays, like we had the Bunnies to win the first half by more than 2. They won by exactly 2. We had the Bunnies to be the first team to score 20 points. They were up 18-16, but then they were down 20-18. Then they carry on and win the game by 8. We had some Manly unders. And my first takeaway from this game, before we get to the moment that everyone wants to talk about, was just the uncharacteristically terrible defense in this game. Really, neither of these sides played defensively as well as they can. I mean, both sides, Bunnies get out to a 10-0 lead, and then Manly strike back with a couple of tries, but both sides had to be disappointed with some of their goal line defense and defensive efforts. Really, when you look back at week 2 of the finals, only one side played real defense, and we'll get to that. But Bunnies were pretty much shocked, really, with the way that Manly were able to score 3 unanswered tries on them in that first half to flip the game when they were up 10-0. I think then they were down 16-10. And really, the Bunnies, I thought they were dead in the water. If you fast forward to the second half, where the Bunnies get back on top, they scored just before halftime to take a lead into the break. And then the Manly scores, I think, back-to-back tries in the second half. And when Gajetski scores off that Daly Cherry Evans grubber, and it was Johnson and Dwayne have a head clash, and they're both lying on the ground in a pool of blood, and there's only like 15 minutes to go. You think that the Bunnies are cooked and they're going to be out of the finals, and Manly's going to get through that game. Of course, it all changes on the sin-binning moment. So Gagai makes that break, gets the ball to Cam Murray, and look, we're going to focus on a lot of negatives, but let's focus on a positive. Cam Murray's playing the house down every single week. That's kind of lost again, and he is always one of their very best, and he was sensational on Friday night, and that shouldn't be lost in the shuffle. I think he had a double again in the fact that, there was controversy in this game, but he is sensational. But another guy who's a gun lock forward, and if you're picking the Australian team, you have to have Jake Trbojevic and Cam Murray. I'd probably play Jake in the front row because you've got to have them both in the team. He's the key guy who's involved in the play. Now, look, there's lots of debate, so there's no point really getting into it massively in this pod. My opinion is I'm watching it live. I see the Bunnies make a break, and I can see that they've got support runners, and I see Jake Trbojevic tug back on Gagai. Now, people can say Gagai was stumbling. People can say that Jake Trbojevic is trying to jostle past him, but you do roll the dice, as Bennett said, when you grab a jersey, and I think it's actually just a combo effect that he gets his legs tangled, he clips Gagai from behind. I don't think Gagai took a dive. I think Gagai was just about ready to fall, gets grabbed a little bit and legs tangled and goes to ground. And obviously the Bunnies then go left and the play gets shut down, and obviously they end up spilling the ball, and the refs blow a penalty, and people are saying, well, they didn't even come close to scoring, so how can you say that's a try scoring opportunity? But I feel like if Gagai keeps his legs and is still on the inside of Cam Murray, it is a massive try-scoring opportunity. Elliott's got to make a real decision about whether he goes to the ball or whether he can shade off and just cover one support player. So ultimately, I think it is an opportunity to score, and it is foul play by Jake Trbojevic, and I understand why he gets 10. Now, I don't know how anyone can argue it's not a penalty. About the best you can do is probably argue that it was harsh for it to be a 10-minute sin bin, but I think the precedent has been there this season. If you guys can hear me, I thought let you guys vote on this as well. So if you thought it was a good call, put a thumbs up. And if you hated the call and didn't think he should have gone to the sin bin, hit the angry expression. And we'll see. You guys can vote with your feet or with your thumbs. as it stands. But I did feel like there was a heated debate going on through the weekend, and it mostly just which side you were on was usually attributed to which side you'd bet on or which side you supported. So anyway, thumbs up if you thought the call was fair. Angry reaction if you are still angry about it. Before we talk about the Bunnies going through and whether they have any chance against Canberra, of course, I'm going to preview the game on Wednesday, so I'm not going to dive into next week too much. I just want to kind of recap Manly's season. I mean, coming into this year, I look at that Manly team and I think, like, that's a side you'd want to coach. It's got Tommy Turbo, Jake Trbojevic, Cherry Evans, tap out Adam Fanua-Blake. Like, that's the core of a really promising team. But I'll be honest, I didn't pick them to make the 8 this year. And what held me back was their depth. I mean, they had the salary cap issues where they had to play a little bit under the cap. Dylan Walker had like a court case going on. He was suspended the first few weeks. Tommy Turbo had the hammy injury, didn't even play till week 3. And they just didn't have any depth. And I thought they're all right, but then their rep players will make Origin and then injury bug will hit and they just won't be able to quite keep pace and make the 8. And that is where I got to take my hat off to Des, because he has worked magic, and guys who you wouldn't have said would provide depth and be quality first graders have all had career seasons. Look at the form of a guy like Moses Sully, the way he played on Friday night. And Des has got the best out of a lot of troops there and got this team, to finish 5th on the ladder. And if it hadn't been for injuries and if it hadn't been for bad luck in this game, it could have gone a lot further. I mean, I've been on a roller coaster with Des. I used to think he was undisputedly one of the best, probably 3 or 4 coaches in the competition. You got to remember, he won a comp with Manly. He got the Dogs to 2 grand finals. But then it's just like, I don't know, the games seem to pass him by, where the Dogs of kind of 2015, 2016 were the most unimaginative, one-dimensional team in the comp, where their hallmark used to be that the forwards would be ball players. And it seems like he's rediscovered those roots. Jake Trbojevic in the middle of the field almost plays the second halfback. And hats off to Des. It's a great season for Manly. I know it's a bitter ending to it. Let's move on to the Saturday night game, which was a bitter ending for everyone involved who tipped the Eels, because we thought it was going to be a cracking encounter. Thought the Eels had the momentum and the confidence, and Storm were looking a little bit shaky, obviously, and hadn't been at their kind of relentless best. And it was just a complete mismatch. And Dead Set Parra didn't turn up to play. And in retrospect, you wonder if week 1 of the finals disguised the fact that the Eels were never on the same level. They finished 6th, but they were never on the same level as kind of those sides above them. And the Storm still are a historically great team. It's just the fact that the Raiders are also awesome, and the Raiders just really restricted them in week 1 of the finals and made us forget how ruthless and how good the Storm could be. And we should have known what the Storm do after a loss. I mean, there was men against boys out there. We talked about how Brisbane were just kind of happy to be there in week 1 of the finals and honestly mailed in their performance at Bank West. And I wonder if the Eels kind of felt that same way a week later, where it's like they were the wooden spooners a year ago. They've come from that to finish 6th to winning a home final. They felt like that was their achievement, and maybe they didn't have the belief in the squad that they could go much further to beat Melbourne in Melbourne, and then they would have had to beat the Roosters next week. But it's still really disappointing. That's the Eels' biggest game, I would argue, in the last 10 years. You've got some quality players like Mitchell Moses and, Gutho's there, and Fergo's come across, and Sevo. And we'll get to Sevo. Dead said we honestly think he might have been drugged for this game, how horrible he was, or on the take, because this guy scores 3 tries in round 25, another couple of tries last week, and he was a detriment. He killed them. And you don't point the finger at one player, but he was absolutely horrific, and just making mind-numbingly bad decisions. This side, the Eels, I mean, they didn't do themselves any favours when they're getting the ball and kicking it dead early in the tackle count, 7 tackle sets, error after error, missed tackle after missed tackle. They also didn't touch, well, they had one completed set in the first 20 minutes. So it was a combination of the Storm just strangling them as they do, boa constricted, don't give you anything, as is evidenced by, keeping them to a goose egg, and also the Eels being awful. But as I said, biggest game for the Eels in 10 years, and you dish up that is awful. That is as disappointing, I think, as what Brisbane was the week before, just because that Eels team had a lot more talent than Brisbane and a lot more promise, and they should have given it a shake, and they didn't get close. And honestly, 32-0 in a way flatters them, because the Storm missed, I think, I think they missed 7 or 8 kicks at goal. I think they might have missed about 7 conversions and missed a penalty. So it could have been even worse. And the crazy thing about that, the way that game played out, is the Storm have just reminded us all that we can't pencil the Roosters into the grand final. There's no way that the Storm, can't make a game of that now. A week off and the Roosters getting, full strength and getting their strongest personnel on board, that's a tough proposition, especially in Sydney. But you can't write the Storm off. They've reminded us when you defend as well as they do, you give yourselves a chance in any game. And I should say it because I'm not trying to hide it. We had 6 best bets on that game. They were all centered around the Eels. And when you get a team that no-shows, you reverse sweep. And we went 0-6 on that game. So we did get killed. Obviously didn't win the same game multi on that one. That should just about do it. There were only 2 games, so I won't take up too much more time. I will say there's so much other sport going on, racing, everything. I'm not even going to name it all. But American football, if you are into that, we've got a very special episode airing on the Tripod page. This is the Tripod Facebook page tonight. We're going to try and get this video up about 7:30, maybe 8 o'clock tonight. That's all I can really say, but it's a very special, very entertaining preview of week 3, and it's going to be a weekly occurrence. And if you're a fan of Nettie, who provides content and has killed it in the NFL all season long, that is a cannot miss viewing, which will be showing on the Tripod page later tonight. But just join in the group. You won't miss any of the action or any of the excitement or any of the tips across all the sports. We know we've got a Rugby World Cup going on. There's an AFL Grand Final next week. I can go on. And let's get back on track with the Rugby League too. We'll be back at it on Wednesday night for, just about the biggest weekend of the season when you've got 2 preliminaries to decide who's going to play for it all. So they're both shaping to be really intriguing encounters, and we'll get back and pick some winners for you on Wednesday night. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Cheers.